Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, I want to highlight this post because it highlights the dog eat dog nature of America. And I'm not trying to sound like a Marxist or a communist or socialist. I'm just simply pointing out how Americans will point to a poor person and just foam at the mouth sometimes. Okay? And it tends to be conservatives a lot. Whereas if you notice with the liberals, they're more like about social programs and about trying to help people, even if it means higher taxes. That's just part of their philosophy. If you look at their social programs, platforms, and whatnot, there is a difference between Democrats, progressives, liberals, leftists, democratic socialists. I understand. Overall, the Republican Party cuts social safety net programs in the name of fiscal responsibility. And just how the poor classes attack each other. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is a trillionaire now, from what I've read in the reports. I'm not saying people can't be rich. I'm just pointing out how maybe people should look at greedy corporations and corrupt politicians and shady bankers and billionaires. Now, he writes here, my health insurance just went up another $500 a month for the missus and me. $39,733. Now for the year. F your SNAP, F your EBT, and F your Obamacare subsidies. I wasn't put on this earth to pay your effing bills. Now here's the thing. Republicans don't want universal health care, and Trump's big beautiful bill kicked a lot of people off of their health care coverage. Okay? If you look at someone like Bernie Sanders, he's the one who's fighting for universal health care, which other countries have. I think it would be great to have both options, public and private. I personally really like Kaiser Permanente more than other types of places. I believe Kaiser is considered private because you need a membership. But you can get, through the Obamacare subsidies, you get covered California. And then California does have a Kaiser through Medi-Cal option if you had Kaiser before you got Medi-Cal. So there's a lot of ways to keep Kaiser, but the facilities are cleaner. And if you don't have the help, like the subsidies, it would be so expensive you couldn't afford it. But then there's like the Medi-Cal when you can go to different doctors, but it's like the community clinics are atrocious and very filthy, honestly. And I mean, the doctors are just, they seem so worn out, absolutely worn out. So I understand, not everyone looks at the public option as something good, but I think it's important for people to realize that the conservatives, they're not really trying to lower healthcare costs. And there's a big lobbying of big pharma and healthcare companies and whatnot. But I want you to see how he's blaming people who EBT and SNAP are food benefits. So you're talking about working people. There's over 8 million people who are working and they cannot afford food. And conservatives tell women you can't get an abortion. Okay? Women belong at home, don't go to college. This means that because there's not a second income from the woman's side, that she's going to need some help to feed her family. Not every job is going to have a living wage. And with AI taking a lot of jobs, you start doing research on how many people are laying off people. The tariffs are not helping. We have a very dysfunctional economy right now. We're honestly sliding down, and who knows what's going to happen. So people need some help with food. And there are lots of AI generated videos going around of arrogant people with their shopping carts full of food. And I shared some posts how a lot of MAGA influencers don't want poor people or poor kids to have cookies or a snack or a little sweet treat. And they're kind of taking pride in how you can make it so bare bones. And they're not looking at old people, kids with severe autism or severe Down syndrome. There's a lot of stories out there about people who they're not gonna be billionaires and they're gonna need help. And in Islam, feeding the poor is a noble deed. Being a sloth is not good. If you're a persistent beggar, you'll show up on Judgment Day with the flesh off your face. In Riyadh Salihin Hadith, we got to see that. And you're supposed to have the balance, right? There's a balance there of work hard, but don't snicker and condemn the poor, because through them you earn good deeds and expiations of sins, if you think about it. Because if you don't keep an oath, you need to expiate that broken oath. Feeding the poor is important and part of that, the fiqh of it, you know. You look at how many times Islam talks about feeding the poor, we begin to realize that we can't look down on them. A lazy person, sure, but look all throughout the earth and just see how many people are working hard in mines, getting cobalt, lithium, and they're not rich. They're not rich at all. And you look at certain farmers, they're working under the sun, their back aches, their knees ache, their body's taking a beating. They don't earn a lot of money, and some of them will need some assistance. And a lot of these people, they don't donate to food banks. We have a lot of food waste in America, and we need some wild orchards, and gotta fix this food stuff. Also, a lot of Americans are not as self-reliant anymore. They don't have a yard to grow food, and I mentioned many times, the homeowners associations don't allow you to grow food in your front yard because it looks ugly and will lower property taxes, they argue. Like the property value, not lower property taxes, lower property value. So they rather people not utilize land, but to grow useless grass, which drinks up valuable water. It also, to keep no dandelions there, which are edible and make a great tea from and make a great jelly from, they spray pesticides. Many of these places. So then they sprinkle their lawns, the pesticide goes into the gutter, more pollution, more cancer-causing chemicals. And if you think about how much water is wasted on green lawns and how many communities don't have access to clean water, you begin to see that there's something very dystopian about our society. And it would be great if people could use their front yards to plant food. Imagine every single home has a fruit tree in the front, or a pumpkin patch, or a cabbage patch, or an anarchy tomato garden. A lot of people could be fed. Look how you drive on the highway, there's no trees, get some walnut trees in there, almonds. There's a lot of plants that can grow wild, cherry trees, apples, pears, plantains, and people can just go out there and get some fresh food. And then that would actually cause a lot of people to not need as much EBT and SNAP benefits. Once you get people having backyard chickens, backyard ducks, backyard quails, teaching them how to butcher and process it, and you let up on the zoning laws, you begin to see a lot of people not rely on the government. But if the government, the politicians, are going to say, no, you can't grow your own food in the front yard, and the housing market is so bad that the poor people can't even afford a home, so they're living in apartments. And the apartments, you're going to have a couple, 2-3 pots. That's not enough food to grow and survive on. Some places there's also winter, so, you're going to have to think about getting people food in the winter. Before, people would have animals they could butcher, but now they got to depend upon the grocery stores and start looking at all the products that come from other countries as well. and the tariffs have affected those prices. So, look at how the politicians live and how their cronies are thriving, and start looking differently at these influencers who make mass amounts of money, like Tim Pool. He's a millionaire. He spends money on gambling. He shames people for using SNAP and EBT. He never talks about how much he's given to a food bank. He could do quite a lot. Instead of gambling, he could donate that money to the poor. But again, a lot of people who have money, they want to keep it because there's a status there, right? Sort of miser energy, hoarding wealth, the dragon on top of his pile of coins. And so people like this person here, they see their health insurance go up, and instead of getting mad at the politicians and the healthcare companies, they say, oh, you poor person, you widow with your 3 kids, it's your fault. It's your fault my health insurance went up, and I don't want your kids to eat because I pay too much in health insurance. You see the misguided anger, the misguided energy, and a lot of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And many are one medical emergency away from utter bankruptcy and poverty. Okay? It's looking like the empire is crumbling, but Ukraine and Is Not Real are still getting foreign aid. Argentina, 40 billion. Tell me, a nation that has money to give, aid, but not feed its own people, but still taxes the people. Come on now. Why is it okay that tax revenue go towards bombs, but not towards a bag of Doritos? Tell me. Tell me the efficacy of that. And when he writes here, I wasn't put on this earth to pay your effing bills. You can feel his agony there, but at the same time, I'm not going to get mad at poor people for eating, because I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could literally turn any one of us into a vagabond. And if you look at Prophet Job in the Quran and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him, that reminds me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make any one of us really ache in our bellies. And when we fast during Ramadan, we have to practice withholding our appetites and still do our prayers and go about our jobs that we have to do in our home life or work life, okay? And to give to the poor as much we can. And it's really important for people to understand that the person who is struggling and can't find work, or works and doesn't make enough because they work a retail job or they're doing DoorDash and stuff like that, and they need some help to buy some little chicken dinner, some can of corn, can of soup, they're not your enemy. Say something to people like Andrew Tate, who's got all those fancy cars. There's a lot of people out there. Look at all the celebrities in Hollywood. Sure, a lot of them do stuff for charity, but then start investigating the charity places. Why churches are not taxed? Because they were supposed to give back to the communities. There should be an auditing of churches to be like Joel Osteen's megachurch and stuff like that. There needs to be extreme auditing of, okay, if you don't give X amount in food benefits to people, then we're going to start taxing you like a business, because you're not really doing your soup kitchen part. And churches are not supposed to be turned into cafeterias, but I do think it's important for religious centers, all religions, to start focusing on feeding the needy. But remember, the government is going to tax you either way. Taxes are not going down in America, they're going up. The American government wants to nickel and dime you as much as possible and give you as little in return as possible. And look how Kash Patel flew on the FBI private jet plane to go see his country music star girlfriend sing. The taxpayers funded that. So notice, just sit back and look at where does your money go. And there's a lot more places you can put your anger than at the needy mom, the disabled veteran. There's going to be some fat people on food stamps and whatnot because a lot of the food is highly processed. There's a lot of medications these people are on that slow down their metabolism and make them fat. If Ozempic can make you skinny, surely there's side effects to medications that can make you fat. And when people are depressed and they have nothing going on, they graze like cattle. They eat crackers and chips and candies and they get their dopamine and happiness from food. They're emotional eaters. So there's a lot to that. People will smoke a cigarette, drink soda, and have chips and watch TV. And I want you to think about how many soda commercials and fast food are played every single day. When I was in the hospital recovering, I had the Food Network on, which, I mean, it was strange because I always watch stuff on YouTube and I have YouTube Premium, alhamdulillah, so I don't see ads, but I almost forgot how invasive the ads are. And everything is Wendy's, Burger King, a zoom in of a Coca-Cola being poured. And then it's a prescription drug stuff. So, and then there's a beer commercial. So beer bellies, French fried guts. And then you just look at the American diet of highly processed foods. And I've also discussed with you how a lot of people who have bipolar, my mom has bipolar, and one of my dearest friend's mom has bipolar. She took a medication. It caused her to have cotton mouth. And no matter how much water she drank, her teeth became really dry. And you get tooth decay when your mouth is dry. It exacerbates cavities and whatnot. And she had to have all her teeth removed. She needed that medication. One of the side effects led her to losing her teeth. So, if you look at side effects of certain medications, you'll begin to notice like, well, there's something going on here. And then you look at our gut biome, constipation, irritable bowel syndrome. There's a lot going on with people. They need to have better habits. But you got to understand, how can you expect a nation to have body of Olympians when fast food commercials are played ad nauseum all day? When I was a kid, watching Nickelodeon, watching Cartoon Network, it was non-stop fast food commercials. So how can you be mad at people who grew up in a system that bombarded them with junk food? And how many schools are teaching cooking skills to children? Very few. How many communities have local areas where you can learn to cook? Alhamdulillah, I've been noticing more and more adult education programs for cooking in the Bay Area. And California, subhanAllah, has a lot of culinary people. And you go to some thrift stores, you're going to find cookbooks. I've been going to the library, getting some different cookbooks for free. So you can make it work, but sometimes you just need a helping hand. I had to teach myself a lot of cooking and practicing and practicing and practicing and experimentation and exploration. But I've tried to get my mom to cook, and she just is lazy and won't do it. But she will try, you know. When I was little, she did not... not little. When I was a teenager, younger, she couldn't cook French toast. She was a terrible cook. Absolutely terrible. I had a job at Crown Fried Chicken in Philly. And I worked in other places. And I went to high school, obviously. And I bought my own food. And I ate outside the home. And with people like my mom, they just don't see the value in cooking. And you need to constantly remind them. And I'm telling you, her medication for her bipolar makes her like a zombie. And for my little bro, you know, does he deserve to not eat because my mom's mentally ill, bipolar person who relies on welfare and EBT? You can't change some people's broken brains. You just can't. And you just gotta take a deep breath and work with those people and then encourage others to work. There's a lot broken in society, but we're not gonna make society better by, shaming the poor more than we hold the politicians accountable, because it's their job to make the economy better, to design architecture, to give permits, to do community projects, fix pollution, hold pharmaceutical companies accountable, all that. When Luigi Mangione blasted that United Healthcare CEO, who United Healthcare at that time, they were the top company who would deny certain claims. And that's life or death for a lot of people. And medical bankruptcy and medical malpractice is quite high in the United States. Look it up. So let us not rage at the poor. Let us not despise the poor. There are hadiths that tell us, look at those who have less than you, essentially, not those who have more than you, so we cannot deny the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. So, again, let's not be dog eat dog, because that's not sustainable. Might makes right. Ruthlessness, cruelty, callousness. This is going to make a lot of people wicked, and actually makes the cartels and mobsters more powerful, because then they offer food programs to the poor, and then we have a parallel government and a parallel society. So if you can donate to food banks, do it. If you're struggling with food, keep going. Stay humble. Paradise is worth everything. Don't become resentful. Understand that some of us are going to have less. Some of us will have more, and that it's all ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the controller of all the bounty. And so if Allah has decreed someone be poor, that is what He has decreed, and we must not shame people for that. Let me know what you think. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and join the blog.